Hey everyone, Adrian here. Welcome back to the Conversations with Adrian podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Shawn Baker. Shawn, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, yeah. Likewise, Adrian. Appreciate you having me here. Interesting. I'm always excited to chat from folks from different parts of the world. So good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate your time, and we're just talking off air about I'm from the future and you're from the past, so I can tell
Nice.
you how it all works out and everything's going to be just fine. So don't worry.
All right, wonderful. Glad to hear that. That's reassuring.
Yeah, good, it's good stuff. All right, so there's it's an interesting path that you've taken with this carnivore diet and things like that. And you've been on this path for 6 or 7 years, from what I can tell. I discovered you on the Joe Rogan podcast. Is that kind of how a lot of people you think have found out about you and about sort of like your way of life and things like that? Was that your big explosion onto the stratosphere, so to speak?
Yeah, yeah. I was on Joe Rogan the end of 2017. I had been so this is my eighth year doing this particular style of eating. So yeah, but I mean, I was about little over a year into it when I kind of got exposed on Joe Rogan. As you know, he has a very big audience, and I was recently on a couple of weeks ago, and that obviously is further exposed this for good or bad.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic in terms of I think like the Joe Rogan podcast is such a huge platform, and even 6 or 7 years ago it was still big, but it's enormous now. So I mean, it's one of those things where like once you're on there, you're going to be in the limelight whether you like it or not. Did you find it intimidating to sort of get on there and speak about the way that you've been utilizing the carnivore diet and things like that, or is it like different now to what it was 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, it was definitely a different experience. I mean, when I went on back in 2017, I was kind of vaguely aware of Joe Rogan. I didn't really follow his listen to his a lot of it, but I knew he had a podcast and was fairly popular, but I did not anticipate the level of impact that it did have even back then. And when I went on the first time, explaining to him that I was basically eating just meat, and he kind of thought I was kind of crazy. I mean, I got that vibe when I was in there with him in the studio. I could tell he was like, "You're pretty crazy." I still get that today. A lot of people still think I'm nuts, but the second time when I went on this time, just a few weeks ago, it was a very different sort of situation. And in fact, he was almost promoting the diet more than I was because he had seen the effect with lots of his friends and people that he is sort of influenced or persuaded to try it. He says that universally he gets a positive result, which is, I mean, pretty consistent with what I see. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say 100% of the people 100% of the time have excellent results, but it is very, very much been beneficial for a whole lot of people for a whole lot of different reasons. And so it was definitely, I mean, just his growth alone. I mean, when I went up there last time, he said, "Hey, just here, meet at this address and show up." So I just kind of parked my car, walked in. This time it was security. I mean, it's a very different experience. He's got a lot more, obviously. I suppose he's got a lot more budget now, with his
Yeah,
Spotify
for sure.
contract, and he's got a whole, and rightfully so. He's so well known that he probably can't go anywhere without being basically mobbed. This is one of the downsides of celebrity. You have to. I mean, it's nice. I mean, I get recognized occasionally, and it's always been very pleasant. I have a little chat with somebody. It's never been intrusive, but I mean, one out of one 10,000 people might recognize me or something like that. If I go to an airport, I run into a couple of people, but with him, it's probably every second person. It's got to be a point where it's like, wait a minute, it's too much. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, much different experience this time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I listen to both of your podcasts, and I listen to a bunch as well because I like to kind of get some different perspectives. There's always people that ask the same sort of questions and the same sort of answers, but then there's a different sort of angle and avenue and things like that that you take on a few things. But I would personally like to revisit the catalyst for you to change your diet so rapidly. And I agree with Joe in the first sense where he was kind of taken aback by the fact that you've eliminated so much out of your diet. And so that would be a concerning thing. I mean, and from a couple of different aspects in terms of nutrition and just the vitamins and the minerals and all that kind of stuff. But I'd really love to know what kind of drove you to the point of getting to that kind of extreme, because to me it's very, very extreme in terms of just how much you're not eating in on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would just turn that around and say I would find it concerning the number of food things that we do include in our diet these days. I mean, all this is pure garbage. I mean, we are literally eating in the United States, it's a 70% ultra processed garbage diet. If we were just put in time in a framework of just winding the clock back, 100 years, not that long ago, before we had massive global transport of all these foods and goods, even refrigeration. So we've dramatically expanded our dietary choices over just a very, very short period of time. But as far as I'm not including fruits and vegetables and whole grains and all the things that we're told that are essential for a healthy dietary pattern, right? And I think, it just is what it is. I mean, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not getting sick because of it. In fact, I would argue that I'm the opposite of sick. I mean, as we speak right now, I'm getting ready to break a bunch more world records and American records on the rowing machine at 57, and my performance is right now as good as it was 10 years ago. And I'm 57. So I mean, it's just like, that's a net result of this. But as far as what would drive me to try this, I think that, like most people, I got older, like everybody does, right? And as I got into my 40s, I didn't like the fact that I was having these aches and pains and not feeling particularly good. But seeing everybody around me, it was like, yeah, that's kind of it. That's kind of what happens when you get older, right? We kind of accept that, hey, you're 40. You're not a 20-year-old anymore. Chill out, relax, don't work so hard. Don't push your body. It's normal to have a sore back and achy and be tired, and seeing things go like that. I didn't really like that. So I was like, well, let me just play. Because I was already a very high level athlete at the time and still training hard and pushing myself hard like I do today and like I've done my whole life. So I was like, well, there's not much more I can do on that front. So let me see what happens with nutrition. Because I never really, considered nutrition. I mean, I understood protein was important and eating enough calories is important and not eating junk was important. I got that, but I didn't really let's sort of really dial in and focus on nutrition. And I mean, I think I was 42 at the time. Right now I'm 6'5", I'm 270 pounds. I mean, that's 122 kilos or something, whatever that is, kilos, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I was 300 then. And I was like, and I was strong. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I was a strong athlete. I was world champion, Highland Games guy. I was powerlifting, at a very high level. But I just didn't feel good. I mean, I could tell I was insulin resistant. I had metabolic disease. My blood pressure was rising. Wasn't sleeping well. I had more body fat. I wasn't fat, but I had more body fat than I really needed to carry. And so I said, well, this isn't good. Let me do what we were told to do. I ate a low-fat diet. I dropped my calories immensely. I exercised even more than I was already doing. I mean, to the point where I was training 3 times a day. I was a surgeon, busy, up at 4:00 in the morning, doing a couple thousand jump ropes, go, do my surgeries. If I had a lunch break, I'd go to the gym and work out during my lunch break, come home, put my kids to sleep, just a couple more thousand jump ropes, and repeat and repeat and repeat. And yeah, within 3 months, I had lost 50 pounds or 20, whatever it is, 24 kilos, 23 kilos or whatever that is. And I mean, was leaner, but I felt like absolute garbage. I was like, this is not sustainable for me. My mood was, I was grouchy, cranky. The nurse is like, man, we really like fat Dr. Baker better than skinny Dr. Baker, right? And so I just went this diet evolution. So I went on a paleo diet for a couple of years, and then I went on a low carb diet for a couple of years, and then I went on a ketogenic diet for a couple of years. And the whole while I'm progressively reading and learning about this stuff, and digging into the the popular diet stuff that's out there, but also some of the reference literature. And and by the way, I was operating on a lot of fat people. I mean, that's just what it was. I mean, you do. Right. In orthopedic practice, you got a lot of people that are fat. Their knees wear out, their hips wear out, their back wears out, their shoulders wear out. And we, collectively, as an orthopedic surgery kind of a local environment, said, hey, look, we got too many fat people that have too many complications. Let's collectively not operate on them until they lose weight. Because what would happen is if you said no, then they'd just go down to the guy across the street and he'd say yes. So we said, look, we need to do something about this issue because we're having, we are, literally it's just more risky to operate on obese patients. And so we decided as a group that, hey, if somebody's BMI is over 35, they don't get a primary knee replacement. in less extreme circumstances. And they've tried all these things. So, we were left to our own devices to have people lose weight. And, it's tough. I mean, it really is. You tell somebody, hey, you need to lose, 10, 20 kilos before we can operate on you. And 95% of the time ain't happening. They come back to their office 6 months later crying. They're in so much pain, miserable. How dare you deprive them from this service? And so eventually you would capitulate and document, hey, we tried and we couldn't do it. And then we proceed with the surgery anyway. But because of my own experience, I started suggesting people go, let's try this low carb ketogenic style of dieting. And, 1 out of 5 patients might say, okay, I'll do it. And I would see them back like 2 weeks after, I recommended the diet. And what would happen in 2 weeks? Not much. I mean, they would, some people would lose a couple of pounds, some people wouldn't have lost any. But what I was seeing is that a number of those people were saying that, hey, my knee doesn't really hurt anymore, which I thought was really curious because, like, well, you didn't really lose much weight and your knee stopped hurting. And I was taught that it's, more pressure. The more weight you have, the more pressure on the joint, the more pain you're associated with. But for whatever reason, I kind of discovered later what was going on, but for whatever reason, we were like, well, if your knee doesn't hurt, then we don't really need to do surgery on you. So I was canceling surgeries. And so that kind of initially got my attention pretty significantly outside of myself and then recommended to other patients. And then I came across this crazy group of people eating all meat, this zero carb, supposedly what they call it, zeroing in on health, zero carb group, social media, Facebook. And I said, these people are freaking nuts, man. What is all they're eating is meat? That's crazy. That ain't right. Where's all the fiber? The same thing. Why don't they have scurvy? Where's all the fiber? The same thing that people sort of question me about. But I mean, I was open-minded enough to kind of read what they were writing and read what they're saying and look at some of the research they were quoting, to the point that as an athlete, I saw that there may be some value as an athlete in trying this, So I did. Literally I started one meal. I just had steak and eggs for one meal. And I was like, well, it tasted pretty good. I didn't die. It was fine, So then I strung 2 meals in a day and then a week. And then I finally got to a month in 2016. I said, I'm going to do this for a month. And I did it for a month. And at the time I had a little, sizable social media account, not what it is today, but I had several thousand people that were following me on Twitter. And I said, hey guys, guess what? I'm going to do this all meat diet for a month. What am I going to die of? Because clearly I'm going to die, right? I'm going to get scurvy. I'm going to have a heart attack because my arteries are going to instantly clog up, or, my colon's going to fall out from lack of fiber or something along those lines. Well, I mean, obviously none of that happened. And in fact, I felt great. I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is the best I've felt in 10 years at least. But then I went back to my regular diet, which was kind of a healthy mixed diet, with fruits and vegetables, but still a lot of meat. And I immediately felt worse. I was just like, my gut doesn't feel as good. I got some back pain coming back. I don't like this. I'm going to go back to the all meat thing because I was enjoying it. And then, 1 month turned into 2 months, turned into 6 months, turned into a year. My wife was like, how long are you going to do this for? I was like, I don't know. Let me try if I can make it a year. And then then obviously I got invited on Rogan's podcast, and then every vegan on the planet decided I was the Antichrist. Oh my God, there's a guy that's telling people to eat meat. How dare he? He's awful. What a mean guy. So that was kind of the genesis of where I kind of went to. And, oh, by the way, because I wanted to do this because of athletic. And this is when I noticed, I was 49 at the time. And I had set on these rowing machines, this Concept 2 thing. I had set 3 or 4, I think 3 American records of different varying distances. And I did. So then I turned 50 and then I went carnivore, and I'd been carnivore 6 months. And I said, well, let me try to see if I can break the 50 plus world records. And I blew away all the times I had in my 40s. I mean, I just got that much more powerful, that much more faster. My recovery was better. My strength was better. My strength to weight ratio was better. My power output was better. I mean, clearly it benefited me athletically, certainly as a 50-year-old athlete. So, my original reason for doing it kind of held up in my view. And even to this day, I mean, like I said, I'm about to turn 57. I am now stronger at 57 than I was at 49. And I was stronger at 50 than I was at 45. And so, I mean, it's interesting, that I'm getting older, but I haven't lost it yet. I mean, there'll be a point, I'm sure, where you'll start to see that curve go down. But so far I've been able to maintain and actually, increase this. And, I know people, they accuse me all the time, you're on steroids, you're on testosterone. I don't do any of that stuff. I've never had a desire to do that stuff. I'm actually opposed to that for most people. I think we overprescribe testosterone, to be honest. I know that's controversial, but so I mean, it's good nutrition. It's obviously training. I train. I train extremely hard. I've been doing that forever. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of where I'm at now. So that's an
Mm.
interesting sort of. There's your segue into the intro.
Yeah, wow. It's so fascinating to hear about the the difference in, for example, mood, just how you're thinking and functioning, particularly the strength. But look, I got to tell you, from from one man to another, like you look fantastic at 57. Like you, from I'm not sure if you've got an amazing filter on your screen or anything like that, but your skin looks clear. You're obviously very athletic and looking good. So I think like there's definitely something going on that's working in the right direction for you for sure.
Well, I mean, and I think the diet does have a role here. I mean, clearly, I mean, I think a bad diet ages people, but also I want to point out, and I think I try to do this, consistent training is probably one of the biggest differentiators between people that age well and people that don't. I don't want to diminish that aspect of it because
Hmm.
I'm very mindful to say I'm strong and fast and relatively lean because I train regularly. It's not just because I eat meat. You're not going to just start eating steaks and all of a sudden turn into some super athlete. You've got to
Sure.
put the work in. But I mean, irrespective of that, like I said, I mean, if you're saying that meat is bad for you and it's killing you and aging you and all these things that we're told, it gives you cancer and heart disease, then I should be dead, quite honestly, because I literally eat, 1.5 kilos of red meat every single day. And I've been doing it for 8 years. And before
Wow.
that, I ate a lot of meat. So it's not like I was, I mean, I just started that. So I've been doing this for, uh, you know, eating a lot of that for decades. But I mean, specifically the last 8 years, I literally, without exaggeration, have probably cooked and consumed close to 10,000 steaks. You know, I mean,
Yes.
I had two for breakfast a little while ago, and I'll have another one or two for dinner tonight. So,
Fuck.
that's what I've been doing, right? It's not killed me so far. Now,
Um,
I mean, maybe I'll drop dead tomorrow. Who knows? I mean, but I mean, like I said, when I'm assessing my cardiovascular output when I hop on a rowing machine, and I just literally yesterday I rode the number one time in the world over just over 1 minute distance, but still for my age group over 55, number one. And when I wasn't even trying, I mean, I'm literally going 90%. I'm like, I'm number one in the world. So
wow.
something
That's
is
nuts.
working right in my physiology, cardiovascular, strength wise. And so
Mm.
is it the meat or is it the lack of the garbage? Like Rogan was saying, well, I think it's mostly the lack of garbage. And there's certainly some truth to that. I think the garbage is definitely prematurely causing us disease and aging for sure. And because I
Mm.
consume basically none of that, you can name any diet out there, carnivore diet, vegan diet, Mediterranean diet, blah, blah, blah. Carnivore diet, it is really, 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 really hard to add any kind of ultra processed food in there. Ketogenic diets, you go to the grocery store, it's all this ultra processed crap with a keto label. Same thing with vegan, same thing with paleo, same thing with any other dietary nomenclature you might want to use. But a carnivore diet, it's all single and food ingredient whole foods, which is, I think, a real important aspect of this.
Mm. So you made an interesting point. Have you ever heard of a guy named Zach Bush?
I
He
have heard the name. Yeah, yeah, I remember the name, and I know he's in the fitness, field in
Yeah,
some
well, he's
regard.
he's also into like the micro gut, what's it called, microbiome, and the gut
Right,
health
right.
and all those sorts of
Mhm.
things. And he
Sure.
kind of made a point to say that, is it the elimination of all the other shit that we eat, or is it the actual food that you are eating? And so he kind of made a similar point to what
Well, I
you're
mean,
saying, what
it's
Jogan was saying,
honestly, it's two sides of the same coin because you got to eat something, right? And so
Yeah.
if you're not eating garbage, what are you eating? And so it's like, if I'm not eating garbage, I'm eating good food. And how do you define the good food? Well, I'm not eating vegetables, and my results are good. So it's like, are the vegetables problem? I'm not the guy that's out here saying that vegetables are poison and are going to kill you. I will say that there are people that do better when they remove vegetables from their diet. I see that every single day of my life. And so I'm gonna say that for certain individuals and certain disease conditions, removal of these supposedly healthy foods can be beneficial. And I consider a carnivore diet a therapeutic protocol. Now if you want to get a tattoo and say I'm carnivore Carl and sit on Instagram and eat raw testicles all day, hey, that's your thing. But I, you're not going to get me saying that nothing else works and this is the only thing. But but I will say that it is a very effective tool to be utilized as deemed necessary. And I hope we have more healthcare providers. In fact, I'm actually in the process of helping to facilitate a number of studies on this diet finally coming out, because I've been talking about this for years, and I'm fully supportive of let's study this in a way that can shed more light on what's going on. Because is it the microbiome? Is it the gut health in general? I think there's a lot to do with that. I think Zach is correct in the fact that our gut physiology has a huge impact on the rest of our health. And it's always, it's mind-boggling to me that I have gastroenterologists, gastroenterology specialists will tell you that these diseases of the gut, whether it be Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or IBS or GERD, have nothing to do with what you eat. They're literally telling their patients, no, diet has no role. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That is a mind-boggling sort of and there's people who believe that they're actually MDs, that have graduated from medical school, and they literally tell people your diet has no bearing whatsoever on your gastrointestinal disease, not to mention any other disease, which I am completely in 100% disagreement with that. I think nutrition has a role in every single physiologic and disease process that we have. Is disease modifies that nutrition modifies that 100%.
Yeah, they think it's all hereditary, or it's just a part of your
Bad
DNA.
luck.
There's nothing
Well,
you
it's
can
just
do
like
about
bad
it.
luck. Why did this happen? Well, doc, why did this happen? Well, it's bad luck,
Part of life.
headaches. We don't know. I mean, this is what we tell people. Well, could it be the fact that I eat 90% garbage? No, that couldn't be that. Here, take your pill. Go away.
Wow. Do you think, Shawn, you could replace meat, like eliminate everything else that you have, and replace meat with something else and still be as healthy, or still be as
You mean
fit, or
like,
still be as
like a
strong?
potato? You mean a mono diet, like a potato diet? Like there's a guy in
Yeah.
Australia
So,
who
like,
famously went on an all potato diet, right?
I've heard this before. I've heard someone. I think I used to run events a few years ago where I was helping people with their marketing and things like that. And there was this girl, I think she's in Sydney, I think, and she was called like Freely the Banana Girl or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
I know who she is. Yeah,
all she ate
it's fruit.
was, I don't know, fucking 10 kilos of bananas every day. And she claimed that her health was amazing. And there was another guy who just ate pineapple, and there was another lady who said, I had this calling from a higher purpose, and it just said eat peaches. And so she ate peaches, just copious amounts, and got rid of disease, and she got rid of anything that was sort of ailing her at the time. But so I obviously haven't tested this, but do you think there's a hypothesis that you could explore, that you could substitute anything else and have a healthier body or healthier physiology, simply because you've eliminated all the other junk and just stuck with, I don't know, like you said, potatoes?
Well, I think you could do that for a period of time. I mean, like if you're eating a standard Western garbage diet and you just say, I'm just going to eat, bananas for 2 months, you probably would see some benefits. You probably lose some weight. You probably lose some issues. Would that be sustainable over a long period of time? I'm not convinced it would be. I mean, I think that, like the potato guy, I can't remember his name, Andrew something or another. I mean, he was morbidly obese, and, he wasn't just eating potatoes. He was eating his own flesh is what he was consuming. I mean, he had a store of fat soluble vitamins and, proteins and other things that were stored in his own flesh. So he was able to consume that for a period of time. And for instance, with say a vegan diet, we know that somewhere around 3 to 5 years is when your B12 stores will deplete. And, you might be able to make it for that period of time. And then you start running into issues. That's why they're at least wisely recommending that everybody on a vegan diet supplement with B12, right? And so, the same argument say, well, what about a carnivore diet? You're not getting vitamin C. You're not getting, high levels of folate. You're not, potential. You're not getting high levels of manganese and some of these other, vitamins, minerals, and cofactors. And I mean, certainly, you can make that argument. I mean, I think historically, we have, in the modern time, I've got people that have done this diet for 20 years and they seem to be doing fine. Right. I mean, is it a metabolic lab where we just lock them away and study every aspect? No, probably, it's not. So you can't say that level of evidence. We have historical, populations clearly that, have lived in places where fruits and vegetables just aren't available. I mean, certainly not year round. And so we know that you can go, there are literally hundreds and upon hundreds of thousands of populations that have subsisted on, or I wouldn't even say subsist, I would say thrived upon a almost exclusively meat-based diet. We can look at all kinds of circumpolar populations. Inuits are often talked about, but there's a Nene, there's a Sami, there's a, there's several other, Russian and Siberian populations. There's the Nilotic African groups, the Maasai are the most famous ones, but there's several others. There are, Mongolian folks. There are, the sort of the South American gaucho populations have lived in for very long periods of time on just meat, and like I said, whether or not this is, again, this goes to my point, whether or not you think you can do this for 20 years or not is sort of beside the point of, does it help people get healthy? And I think that's something. And so if you want to try an all peats diet, go for it. I'm not your mother. You go for it and see it and report back. I've rarely seen someone that successfully has done that. I mean, I've rarely seen anybody that's done anything besides red meat. And, quite honest, because people ask me, can I just do it all on eggs? Can I do it all on fish? And I've not seen that be successful for a lot of people for some reason, including ruminant meat for some reason seems to be more complete. And I think that is, it's compatible with our human evolutionary sort of, particularly in the colder climes, particularly given that most of Homo sapiens existence was in ice age or in and out of ice ages for the 200 or 300,000 years that Homo sapiens have walked the planet. And then even farther back, if we go back to the other hominids and other human species, such as Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo heidelbergensis, and on and on and on. And so, but yeah, your point is, could somebody could somebody's health get improved by eliminating everything but popcorn? Probably, yes. Depending on where they started at, they would lose.
But how sustainable would it be?
How sustainable would it be? And you got, like I said, I'm the last guy to criticize people for doing whatever works for them. I'm like, hey, if just eating, peaches all day works for you, great, go for it. I would be obviously very interested in to see how they did. And I'm not, I think Freely the Banana Girl, she's ideologically driven. Clearly, she's a raving lunatic vegan wacko. Honestly, she is. And I'm not sure how well she's doing these days. She's living in the jungles of Costa Rica or somewhere. I don't know where the hell she is, but
I have no idea.
No, we see that, and I don't know what the time course is because I see a lot of plant-based people, and sometimes they hold off for 25, 30 years, and they seem to survive. But they see this sudden gradual decline in a number of issues, and finally they just kind of give up the ghost and say, "Look, I can't do it anymore.
Just can't keep it up.
They can't keep it up, and they can't keep up because a lot of times they get sort of attached to the ideology rather than the physiology, and it's just more of, and then you'll start hearing a lot of them say it's not about the health, it's about the animals." And I'm like, okay, so you're willing to let your teeth fall out because you pretend you're saving some cow somewhere. Yes, I'm willing to do that. So once they start saying that, I'm like, you guys, you're completely irrational. There's
doing it for the wrong reasons. Yeah. And look, I think largely to your point, there are people that could try the carnivore diet and it just wouldn't be compatible to their constitution or whatever, however you want to call it. And there's conversely some people, like I know a few people that are vegan and vegetarian and have been for quite some time. And look, I've got to be honest, they look youthful, they look like lean and whatever. I think that they certainly are not holding on to as much muscle mass as what I would consider to be someone of a strong, particularly in a masculine, in a male, some sort of strong masculine. I've never seen anyone that's vegan that's really sort of going hard in the gym and lifting a lot of weight. I could be proven wrong.
There's some out there, to be honest. They're fair. Some of them are taking performance enhancing drugs. Some of them may not be, but
yeah, maybe.
Like I said, I think it's doable. I honestly think it's doable for some people if you supplement right and you take, these protein isolates and, because protein is clearly harder to get on a vegan diet, on a whole food vegan diet, I'll say for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
That is clear because you got to consume more calories and protein's not as bioavailable and it's not complete. And you got to mix all these food and you can end up with GI issues. And like you said, the stereotype is there for a reason. Usually most vegans tend to be a little less robust. They tend to be thin, which is good. I mean, thin is good generally if everybody's fat. I mean, so you got this over thinner. But at the same time, I think, just as much as obesity is a problem, we do have problems with frailty. And I think that's particularly as we get older. You might not pick it up in your 20s, 30s, 40s, but you start getting in your 50s and 60s and 70s, particularly.
It's important.
You need that. You need that high quality protein. I mean, we know, like, unequivocally, numerous studies have now shown the problems with higher fracture rates, poor bone mineral density, high rates of osteopenia and osteoporosis among plant-based dieters. I mean, it's clear as can be. And so that signal's there. So there is this general erosion, and you may not be consuming animal products in your mouth, but you're slowly consuming your own tissues. So you are still on a kind of an animal-based diet.
Yeah, for sure. Shawn, what do you eat every day? What would be a typical day to day? I mean, like,
well, I mean,
yeah. Look, it's a given. You eat steak every day, but I mean,
well, some
like,
days
how
that's
do you
all I
cook
eat.
it? What type of steak? How do you prepare it? Is there any variance as to things that
Sure.
you
So
add, salt, pepper, sauces? Like, what do you do?
yeah, so I'm not the guy to get elaborate recipe tips from. It's pretty boring. So I mean, literally 98% of my diet is me taking a steak, throwing it in the grill, and throwing salt on it and eating it. That is literally 98% of my diet. When I go wild, I'll throw an egg with it, or I might have some fish occasionally, or I might throw a piece of cheese on a burger patty. I mean, that's something I do. Recently I've been having a little bit more dairy, so I have like some non-fat Greek yogurt. It has a little bit extra just food, because I'm in a point where I'm trying to, stay heavier right now for competition reasons. But once in a while, and like I said, I'm not, this isn't ideologic for me. This isn't religion for me. Once in a while, I have a friggin' piece of cake. I mean, on Thanksgiving, which we celebrate here in the U.S., you guys don't do in Australia, but pumpkin pie is kind of a tradition. I had a piece of pumpkin pie with whipped cream on it on whenever Thanksgiving was, the 25th of November. And I think that was the only piece of cake I've had in 2023.
Really?
So, I mean, it's like, it's like once, the reason I don't eat it more often is I just don't want this stuff. I literally am not interested in eating stuff, which I used to love this stuff. I used to be a guy that was like, life's too short, eat dessert first. It's literally like, I'm gonna eat my dessert before I eat my meal. I mean, I love those things. I literally love sweets and things like that. I would work out, incredibly hard so that I could justify myself eating those things. Right. But now it's just like, I don't even really want those things, which is really a weird sort of situation to be in, because most people are like, I always want this stuff and I'm always fighting with myself not to have it. I would rather have a juicy fat, medium rare ribeye with a little bit of fat on there, nicely charred fat, with a little bit of salt. To me, that is like the perfect meal. And that's what I have a lot of times. Yeah. Because people will like, don't you get, well, they'll ask me, don't you ever cheat? And I said, my whole diet is a cheat meal. I eat ribeye steak just about every day. You guys call them Scotch fillets there, but I mean, that's like every day. I mean, and I'm like my dogs, literally my dogs, when I feed my dogs and they get meat too, as I'm waiting to feed them, I'm getting all the food. My oldest dog, she's a golden retriever. She's literally jumping up and down and drool's coming out of her mouth. And she's so excited and so happy to eat it. That's literally how I feel. Cause I'm like, not only do I love this stuff, but I like the way it makes me feel afterwards. I just feel really viscerally satisfied in a way that you don't with other foods. You have this like, expensive meal and, it tastes good and it tantalizes your taste buds but when you're done, you're kind of left going like, yeah, right. I don't really feel satisfied in a way, unless you binge, unless you just like gorge. And I'm a guy that like, you see like these little pints of ice cream. We have these Ben and Jerry's ice creams. And I was like, who the hell eats one of those? That's like a snack. It's like, why even open it up unless you're going to eat 2 or 3 of them? I'm the guy that will like consume. I'm not a moderator guy. I'm kind of an excessive personality and excessive whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to do to the max in a way. When I was a surgeon, I'm doing the more surgeries than anybody else in the hospital. And I always did. I was the number one guy because I was like hustling my ass off to do it. Athletics, same way. I want to break world records. I want to do this and that. And so that's kind of my personality. But I mean, I really, if I really want a friggin' piece of cake, I will have it. It's just I don't want it very often. I think that's a concept that most people don't understand, is not really actually wanting that stuff, because we've grown up. It's a reward. It's a treat. It's something. It's a motivation. it's, I deserve it because I worked hard. You give yourself those justifications to eat this, garbage is basically what, and the garbage tastes good. I mean, to the credit of the food manufacturers, they have made wildly addictive, wonderfully tasting, delicious, addictive foods. I mean,
Addictive
that's
food.
what they
That's
set off
right.
to do. And that's what they
Mm.
do. And so I can see why people are they just, and you think about it's cheap. It's like being a
You
heroin
can buy a
addict who's
shitload of it and it's cheap as,
yeah,
yeah, I know what you mean.
right, right. I mean, if it's like being a heroin addict where not only was heroin illegal, was it legal, it was super cheap and everybody was doing it and it was around you everywhere and it was considered good for you, right? It was like, oh, it's a reward. Everybody'd be heroin addicts if that was the situation. So I think we have the same thing with this
Yeah.
kind of processed food
You
epidemic.
don't even you don't even crave like a bowl of fruit. Like what about just a nice watermelon on a hot day, or some pineapple or a bowl of
Not generally, not generally.
yeah.
I mean, like if I'm hot and sweaty, I'm thirsty. I mean, but usually I'll drink some fluid, and that usually slakes that sort of desire. Have in the 8 years, this is the 8th year I've been doing it, I've probably eaten fruit, I don't know, less than a dozen times, and it's usually like a bite, maybe I'll have an apple occasionally. My wife she used to be vegetarian. And when I met her, and she was kind of leaving that, and she had all kinds of gut issues, like a lot of vegetarians do. And she is now probably 95% carnivore. She wants a steak every day. And it took me 5 years for her to eventually eat a piece of red meat. I was like super excited when she finally ate a hamburger. I was like, oh my God, finally, after 5 years of trying. And now she wants steak every single day. It's like, yeah,
Wow.
where's my steak? Where's my steak? And I'm happy because the only problem is she likes them well done, which drives me crazy because I'm like, oh man, cooking another damn steak.
Yeah.
But she still consumes a little bit of fruit, and she has like if you go to our house at the dinner table, it's a big massive pile of meat of some sort, steak, hamburger, something like that.
Mhm.
And there's usually one apple that's been cut up, and there's usually some cheese. She's from France, and so she likes some of these little cheeses. And that's what dinner looks like. And I just eat the
Wow.
steak. Sometimes I'll grab a piece of cheese. Once in a blue moon, I might even take a bite of apple. But it's I don't really like look at it and go, "Ooh, I really want that." It's weird. It's really weird because you think about it from the outsider perspective. I would have never believed this too. I would like, how could you possibly give up all these wonderful varieties of food that we have? We have this wonderful modern food system, and I can get a watermelon in January in Alaska if I want. It's just it boggles the mind that you're like suddenly you just don't. It's kind of interesting because there was a study back in the or at least I don't know if an account at least of these Eskimo or Inuits back whatever 1920, and people would come in there with like fruit for these people, and they were like, no, we don't want that. We don't even, because we don't feel as good. We know it doesn't make us feel as good. We're just going to stick to
Mm.
our nasty seal blubber, or whatever. I mean, literally they got like, and it's like I'm kind of the same way now. It's like I'm like my dog now. It's weird. So anyway, that's
Wow.
it.
So I know you talk a lot to you do what you want to do. I'm doing what I'm doing, and all those sorts of things, which I think is fair. I like the fact that you say, hey, listen, try it, see what you think. If you like it, get on board. If you don't, do whatever you want. But you are coaching clients now, as far as I know, like you're helping people on many levels in terms of improving their health. So the carnivore diet, or at least dietary manipulation or supplementation and things like that, would be a huge component of how you're helping people. So can we talk to that a little bit in terms of what you're doing, how you're helping people, what you're noticing with particular disease or metabolic syndrome, all those sorts of things, and perhaps if you can add a little bit of science behind it, because I know when you first went on Rogan, he was like, "Did you have any blood work done?" You're like, "Nah, man, I haven't had any blood work done." But nowadays, I would imagine that you would be monitoring things a little bit more carefully. Particularly, you're under a lot more scrutiny from a public eye as well, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, what I said on Rogan was I'm not sure which blood tests would show what you think we need to show, and I think
Yeah,
that's an
right.
important distinction of that. It's not that a blood test has no bearing, and I do still think that we sort of think that our blood can tell us everything. I get people to continuously send me their labs. Hey, doc, what do you think about my labs? I'm like, I don't know who the hell you are. I have no idea what's going on with you clinically. I mean, I can tell you what these labs are relative to the reference range, but beyond that, I cannot tell you if it's good, bad, indifferent, or something else, right?
Sure.
Because we have to realize that the labs are a single snapshot, a single second of what's going on in your blood at that very second. And it may not be going on chronically, and it may change every single day. And so we have to be mindful of that. And so I tend to be well, what's your body composition like? And if you want to know, like, you know, I mean, you could look at someone's blood. Could you tell if they're fat or not by looking at their blood? I mean, there might be some trends there that obese people have higher white blood cell counts, which they do. But you're not going to say, you know, you're not going to disregard the person in front of you who's got this big old belly and say, "Whoa, your blood looks good. Carry on," right? So, I mean, it's like you've got to look at the markers that actually are clinically meaningful and clinically relevant to the patient. You know, the patient may not, you know, let's say the patient comes in with a beautiful, their LDL is perfectly low and everybody's happy, and they're friggin' miserable. They're depressed. They're impotent. Their knees hurt. I mean, you didn't learn that from the labs. You learned that from actually talking to this patient. So, I mean, there's a lot of that where I think we kind of overvalue labs in a way. And a lot of people think just because I can go to lab, this is in the US, I can go to LabCorp and I can literally order $10,000 worth of lab studies on myself. I could slice and dice myself every single way possible. And what does it tell me? I mean, so every time I see somebody who gets, and some people send me, come back with, they have literally 150 lab values that they want me to look at. And I'm like, and always, every single time, without exception, 5, 10, 15 of them are out of reference range and they're freaked out about it. And I'm just like, look, you could order the exact same labs tomorrow and different ones would be out of range. And that, you know, so whatever I'm telling you today would not even apply tomorrow, perhaps. So that's something that I have to sort of, I'm trying to, you know, impart that information to other people. But as far as, you know, your question about, you know, what have I learned and what have I been doing? Yes. I mean, we have a company, a digital health company. We're licensed in all 50 states in the US called Revero. And we basically treat people with diseases with, in a lot of ways, nutrition. And we don't always do carnivore. I mean, carnivore, I think is, I like to reserve it as like the ultimate weapon against certain things. And so certain diseases probably do best with that. Other diseases, maybe you don't need to do as much. You can get away with a little more you know, variety, I suppose. I think certain conditions respond to, say, a higher fat approach. You know, like I think a lot of the sort of neuroinflammatory conditions, you know, the central nervous system diseases, like, for instance, dementia, like, for instance, multiple sclerosis, some of the, you know, mood disorders, they tend to do better on a little bit higher fat approach relative to what, say, I do. I mean, I'm a protein guy. I am clearly in the camp of eat a lot of protein. You know, eat more than you already have protein. But I'm also in the camp of work out. You know, I mean, so I think those things go hand in hand. And I think ultimately everybody should be doing some strength training or trying to preserve lean mass or build lean mass if they don't already have it. And so there's clearly, you know, different requirements for different people. Men and women have some differences. Women tend to do, I mean, they have a relative higher energy requirement in many cases. I mean, it varies with their menstrual cycle. So there's things that it varies, you know, obviously during pregnancy, that's a whole different sort of situation there. So there's definitely differences. You know, you know, I mean, the commonality is that I think that, you know, a meat-based diet generally works in a general frame for most people. You know, I mean, I think, you know, you get them in, there's people that have a hard time transitioning for sure. I mean, there's people that are, I mean, they are literally dependent upon a lot of carbohydrates. They, you know, you take it away from them, and it's like a heroin addict leaving, you know, withdrawing. They're in there throwing up and puking and feeling miserable, and you know, that can occur. There's people with certain medications where you've got to be very careful. I mean, you can't just say, "Hey, go on a low carb diet and everything's going to be great." I mean, these diabetics, I mean, they'll freaking go into hypoglycemic coma. You know, if they're still taking their normal amount of meds and they drop all their carbs out. Same thing with blood pressure. Same thing with some of these. You know, mental health diseases, you know, where certain mental health drugs can be impacted by our nutrition. So there's a lot of things in there. That's why we generally are happy when people have supervision of a healthcare provider, particularly a physician, which is not everybody has access to that. And a lot of times the physicians have no clue. They're like, I'm used to seeing fat people that just eat junk, you know, so they don't really know how to deal in this situation. So, but I mean, as far as, you know, one thing that, you know, one of the biggest criticism of this diet, or really any low carb diet in general, is, oh my God, your cholesterol is going to go up and you're going to have a heart attack. I mean, you know, that is, I mean, probably the number one impediment for most people trying this, you know. And often my retort is, hey, just do it for 3 months, you know, and see how you do first before you dismiss any sort of, you know, you're gonna have a heart attack, because it's very unlikely eating steak and eggs for 3 months is going to give you a heart attack. It's just even the cardiologists will say, oh, it takes years and years and years and years, decades for it to develop. And yet they're like, don't do a carnivore diet because like in three minutes, you're going to have, eat 2 steak and eggs, you're going to drop dead of a heart attack tomorrow. I mean, so there's just this really sort of, speaking out of both sides of their face sort of messaging. And it's like, well, what if they try for 3 months and see how it does? And then they can go from there and make adjustments as needed. And so, but yeah, I mean, it's my opinion, and my opinion is based upon a lot of study of research and direct observation in individuals that, for instance, LDL cholesterol or ApoB, as some people are more sort of interested in these days, which basically they're more or less, they go in the same direction. So if your LDL cholesterol is super high, your ApoB is going to be high. That's just the way it works. So effectively, it's the same, more or less the same biomarker. That it's probably a dependent variable. It's like, yes, it causes yes, it's part of the heart disease causal pathway. But here's some caveats to that. It may not be as relevant in people that are otherwise metabolically healthy. And so that's why you see people with super high LDL cholesterol that never have heart attacks. And you see people with low LDL cholesterol that do have heart attacks. And you see studies out there that show that high LDL cholesterol is associated with decreased all-cause mortality. People live longer. LDL cholesterol or lipoproteins in general, they have immune function roles. I mean, we literally need this. It's not there for the hell of it. It's not there. Our body doesn't produce something that's inherently going to kill us. I mean, it wouldn't make sense, right? Why would the hell would our body make something that's only there to kill us? It has multiple purposes. And, when I see the cardiologist saying, we need to get this stuff down as low as humanly possible, 0 is even better. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when all these people get dementia or whatever, or become suicidal? They don't seem to notice that or care about that for some reason. I mean, they've got some drug funded studies where they'll look at like, oh, there's a genetic disease where they have low cholesterol and they don't have these issues. Well, a genetic disease is not the same thing. I mean, because that genetic disease probably has 12, 15, 20, 100 different, sort of effects on the body. And you're only looking at one single marker. And that's very dangerous in a way.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're no stranger to the fact that there's been a demonization of cholesterol, fat, and almost this encouragement of things that look like they're low fat and better for you, but they're just a chemical shitstorm. Like the whole thing is just put together in a factory and it spews out to you as a beautifully marketed and packaged deal that you'll think you're getting the most nutrition out of. And what I like about, I guess, your approach to things is it's very simplistic. I mean, you don't strike me as a guy who kind of really overcomplicates things. And so I think that approach to things is a slow process of elimination and get you to a point where you now have got a baseline to work from, and maybe you can add or subtract, wherever you see fit. But I think that approach is definitely something that I think a lot of people should take away from. Just in wrapping this up though, Shawn, like if someone's listening to this and they want to get started, do you have, obviously you've got some literature, you've got books and things like that, which people can grab, but is there a basic protocol or a recommendation as to where to start or how to get going with the carnivore diet?
Yeah, let me I just want to respond to what you mentioned about the simplicity of this. I think that, call me crazy, but most animals on the planet do not need an app or they need to wear some tracker in order to know what the hell they're supposed to eat. I mean, I don't think a human species, and if you give us the right food and you should eat enough, you should know when to eat, you should eat when you're hungry, and you should get a good result. I think that diet exists for humans. I really do. And the fact that we're constantly being bombarded with this supplement or this complicated scheme, eat this food first and this food second, and get a berry from this continent and a little leaf from that continent, and make it all balanced. I'm like, that would have never even been physically humanly possible outside of the last 20 years, 30 years. And so yes, it's very simple in execution, which I think it should be. I think a lot of people that overly complicate things do so in a way that the audience becomes dependent upon them. Well, this guru is going to tell me exactly how to dial in this thing, and I can't figure it out myself because I need him. And then therefore, and they probably got a supplement they sell you to fix this and this X, Y, and Z product. I don't sell supplements. There's no Dr. Baker's line of magic magic pills or organ blend or any of that stuff. And quite honestly, there never will be. I don't have an interest in that. I think it's kind of snake oily, and I don't get into that stuff. But as far as starting the diet, yes, I've got a book, so I will sell it. It's the Carnivore Diet by me, Shawn Baker, MD. That I laid it out. I wrote that book in 2018 after I was on Rogan. It was published in 2019. I don't think I would change really anything in there, quite honestly. There's a few new studies that have come out that support what I've talked about that I might have included, but the basic premise is, I literally could have wrote the book and said, eat a damn steak, period. And then basically eat a steak till you're full. And then when you get hungry again, eat another one. That's as simple as it can be. And I think that holds up for most people. But there's things that happen, there's adjustments, there's transitions. I think it's important. I've collected a lot of data on this stuff because I'm serious about advancing the science about it. It's not just, flash and hand waving. So I really want to scientifically validate what we're doing here, because I think it's beneficial for humans, for us to know how. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a dietary protocol that could get rid of Crohn's disease, for instance, and you didn't have millions of people, chronically medicated and having their bowels cut out, 10 years into the disease process? Wouldn't that be cool if we could do that? As a physician, that's what I think. And so, we know that, for instance, having a supportive environment is helpful. So sometimes it's you have it around you. You've got a very supportive family, spouse, maybe boss, maybe friends. Sometimes you don't. Some people, they're like, "What are you, nuts? You crazy? You're going to kill yourself. Oh my God, eating all that meat's bad for the environment." So you have to find a supportive place. So, there's online communities. We offer one at carnivore.diet. I'm there every day talking to people on Zoom calls. And we have people from Australia. It's weird because I do it at 9 a.m. my time. So it's like 3 a.m. in Sydney or something like that. And people are like, and people come. I'm like, what the hell are you doing now? Go get some sleep, man. But, that's important. I think that with any diet, you got to enjoy what you're eating, man. If you're like, let's just say like World Carnivore Month is coming up January 1. I started that back 7 years ago because my birthday's in January and it was Veganuary. And I'm like, I don't want this vegan bullshit on my birthday month. I'm making World Carnivore Month. So I started that. And now we have, literally hundreds of thousands of people that do it every year. And so I think, variety at the beginning is important because like I mentioned, we go to the grocery store and how many food selections are there? Are literally 10,000 items in the shop. You can just pick up any of them. There's blue food and, ultraviolet food and pink food and every color. And we've got fake food that tastes like other fake food. I laugh when we've got this cereal flavored maple syrup, Captain Crunch maple syrup that they're selling in the products. I'm like, it's just ridiculous, right? Yeah. So, I think, some variety is helpful. So I say, start with some animal products you like. Maybe you like bacon, maybe you like eggs, maybe you like steak, maybe you like pork, maybe you like chicken, maybe you like seafood. Maybe you can do a little dairy and a little spices. Just give you enough variety so you feel like, hey, I've got this variety because I'm used to that. And then you'll eventually, like if you're serious about it, you want to do it over the longer period, you'll eventually start figuring out what works for you. Because really, if we look at it as an elimination diet, which it really is, it's an elimination diet to eliminate stuff that's causing you issues, you start to pare things down. And I think the safest diet, as far as when I mean safe, the one that most people seem to tolerate without its sensitivities, is just a ruminant meat. That's, lamb would be very appropriate in Australia, but also be beef and lamb. These are the animals that we just seem to do for whatever reason really, really well with. We don't have, there's people that have egg allergies and dairy allergies and seafood allergies and chicken allergies and rabbit allergies and all kinds of fruits and vegetable allergies. But it's rare to see somebody with a true red meat allergy. There's a tick that some people get bit by and that causes that, but that's really, I don't think that happens that often, quite honestly. Maybe the vegans are going to turn into a bioweapon and it'll happen more, but it's it's one of those things where, I tell people, eat enough. How much? Because how much should I eat? Well, eat enough so you don't want garbage. It's simple as that. Eat enough meat so you don't want a cupcake or a pizza or whatever the garbage you normally are eating. And that's, I think that's a pretty good rule. You eat enough so you're satisfied. And think about it. That's how we should generally eat anyway. Eat enough so we're not hungry anymore. And then what happens a lot of times, it's there's these new drugs, these GLP-1 receptor agonists, Ozempic, Mounjaro, semaglutide. I'm sure it's in Australia now as well. And people they're eating garbage and I'm just going to inject myself with these drugs to lose weight. It's huge in America right now. They're making billions and billions, money hand over fist on that stuff. Well, meat actually does the same thing in a way. It affects this incretin hormone called glucagon-like peptide 1, which is found in the distal part of the small intestine and the ileum particularly. And it basically just slows down digestion, and it tells you you're full, and it slows down gastric emptying time, and it tells you you're full, and you don't want to eat. Like for me, like when I eat a big old breakfast, I'm literally not hungry all day. I literally don't even think about food. And before I was like, if I saw food, I want it. Before, I mean, I can remember I was eating constantly. I was eating all day long. I was, and the average American, I'm sure the average Australian is similar. They get up at 7 a.m., they start eating, and they don't stop eating until 10 p.m., until they go to bed. And it's just constantly just snack, graze. Oh, I'm hungry. Let me have a little of that, a little of that. That's not how we're designed. I don't think, if we were to assume at some point in our evolution, we were a hunter-gatherer species. Can you imagine if you were walking across tracking animals and you said, hey, chief, I got to stop and eat, man. Every 2 hours, they'd fucking shoot you. I mean, they wouldn't shoot you, they'd stab you, right? Because you just couldn't physically do that. You think about how to stop to prepare a meal. I mean, particularly if you're cooking it, you got to build a fire. If you're, build a fire, do blah, 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 blah. So it wasn't like we were eating all the time. Maybe we're walking through, maybe it's summertime and there's some berries we can grab occasionally, but that's not going to be the day-to-day, sort of meal frequency. I would doubt, particularly, if you're, as we became civilized, I guess, and we, started to develop agriculture about 15,000 years ago, and we started to be stationary. Now we can, eat on a more sort of frequent basis, although that didn't happen until later because there just wasn't enough food yet. So anyway, there you
go. Very good. All right, mate. It's been great talking to you. I really appreciate your time. I'm loving your Instagram feed. And I'm not sure. Do you say taking the piss in America? Do you say when you take the piss out of someone? Have you ever heard of that?
Well, I know we don't say it in America, but I know what it means.
You know what it means?
Yeah. I've been around enough of the British sort. It's a kind of a British,
empire
that's exactly type of thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I shouldn't take the piss out of vegans too much, but I think it's hilarious when you do it. So I'll let you continue to do that. I think it's great.
Well, and honestly, I don't mean any bad. I mean, there are plenty of nice vegan people out there. It's just the ones I run into online are basically assholes.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, wild. I don't care. I'm like, if you want to be vegan, go for it, have fun at it. But the second you start telling me and moralizing to me that you're a bad person, you're an animal abuser, you're a rapist, you support genocides and holocausts, and you're a slave owner. I mean, that stuff is just nonsense. And then you start saying, well, and then in particular, meat is bad for you and killing people. I'm going to push back against that stuff because I vehemently disagree with that stuff. But if you want to eat, if you want to eat your beans and leaves, have at it. You can have those. I'm not going to compete for
them. Well done. All right, mate. It's been great talking to you. I'll put some links in the show notes so everyone can go and follow you, buy your book, and look at all your work, follow you on Instagram and all those sorts of things. So I appreciate you. Thanks for doing what you do, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
All right, Adrian. Appreciate it, man.
See you, buddy.